Hello. Thank you for joining our weekly live stream. We're going to talk today about managing careers in IT. Whether you're a job seeker or someone who's trying to build out an IT team, we're going to dive into the world of IT staffing, recruiting, building a team, career advice, and anything you want to ask as it relates to any of the above. So we're going to introduce our guest here in just a moment. But before I do, just a couple logistical things. We do these live streams every Tuesday, same time, same place. We're streaming to YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and X and TikTok. So thank you for joining wherever you're watching here today. And feel free to chime in with any questions or chat or comments you have along the way. We're watching all the chats in the streams right now, so we'll keep an eye on any questions you might have along the way. So encourage you to jump in with questions, any advice you're looking for. I'll get us started with some questions, but obviously love to hear from the audience as well. And speaking of hearing from the audience, I would love to hear where in the world you're joining from today. What city and country are you joining from today? We tend to draw in people from all over the world, so it'd be great to see where you're joining from here today. So if you don't mind dropping in the chat where you're joining from, city and country, that'd be great. I'm joining from Denver, Colorado, and I'll let our guest introduce himself and tell us where he's joining from. But joining us to have this discussion around managing IT staff and resources and recruiting, all that stuff, is Jonathan Whipple, who's the CEO of Lander Talent. So, Jonathan, thanks for being here today.
Hey, Eric. Thanks for having me on. And I'm joining from Los Angeles, California.
Great to have you here today. It's been a while since you've been on the podcast. And since you were last on the podcast, you and I have entered into a venture together, starting a company called Lander Talent. So you're the CEO, I'm the chairman. We're working together to get this thing going as far as providing staffing options to organizations throughout the world as it relates to their IT staffing needs. But tell us to start, if you don't mind, maybe actually start with your background, and then I want to get into why Lander Talent. Why did we decide to do that? So let's start with your background, because it's pretty unique and different than most staffing people I know.
Yeah, of course. So I started in entertainment. That's my background. I cast hundreds, maybe thousands of hours of television for every network and streaming company that you could think of. So I came from this world of finding the right fit for the right role. Sometimes that's a contestant who went on to win $1 million. Sometimes that's helping a former pop star become a TV host, and it's something that I loved and something that I was great at. And as I aged, I wanted to get into something new, and staffing felt very similar. It felt like, okay, this is a natural progression. Let me go find the right people for the right role at big old companies. And so that's what I've been doing for the last better part of this decade. So
interesting. So yeah. It seems like, correct me if I'm wrong, or maybe you can fill in the gaps here. But yeah. It seems like if I'm thinking of what that must be like, having worked in Hollywood and doing casting and then moving into recruiting, it seems like you would have a unique sixth sense around the intangible feel or, cultural fit, things like that maybe don't show up on a resume. Is that true? Because it seems like when you're casting, it's not about credentials necessarily, although I imagine that's part of it. But it seems like a big part of that would just be, does this feel right? Does this feel like a good fit with our audience or what we're trying to produce here?
Yeah, I think that's a little bit of an unfair advantage. If you come from a world where you've had 10,000 hours of interviews, it does make it a little bit easier to spot talent, or a lot easier. And it is there is so much about the feeling, like you mentioned, like what makes somebody a good fit, because the talent is a given. Ideally, if you're applying for a role, you and everyone else applying for the role has the skills. So it's what are those things that differentiate you from the competition? What makes you a good fit? And what is this company, or what is, in my past life, what is this show? What does it really need?
Right. So you've been in the recruiting space now for what has been about 5 years? Was it right during COVID, right? Was when I think you were telling me you first got into it. And that was probably a good time to make a switch from television or entertainment at a time when it was probably hard to do your job with casting and whatnot. But so you've been doing this 5 years now. Why Lander Talent? Like, what made you decide, and why do you think Lander Talent fills such a unique need in the IT staffing space?
I think IT staffing it's noisy. It's transactional. I'm sure anybody who is a hiring manager who's watching this right now can just go ahead and search their inbox, and there's a just checking in message that they get every 16 hours from recruiters, and it's cold, it's transactional. You don't have it's not authentic, it's not built with candidates in mind, it's not built with hiring managers in mind. And I think really what we saw is an opportunity to build a better experience, build something that people want to be a part of, build, hopefully a movement of people who are aligned and get everything about what we're doing and everything about what needs to be done in terms of mission. So I think really building something with heart, with people at the core, and focusing on that experience and making the experience better for both sides is really, I think, the heart of a lot of the conversations you and I have had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it seems like, the transactional aspect is an important, nuance that I know we're trying to overcome. And you've also done a really nice job of providing a lot of value, even since before we started Lander Talent. I mean, this is how you and I met, was through social media on LinkedIn. I started
Mhm.
following you probably, I don't know, year and a half ago, maybe. And
Yeah.
that's how we got connected. But one thing that's really unique about you that I don't see other recruiters doing is you're out there giving constant advice and direction to people that are looking to build their careers, whether it's in IT or not. I mean, the stuff you put out there is relevant to any field, really. So tell us about that. How did you get into the whole content creation? You've become somewhat of a LinkedIn guru. You've amassed a huge following in a very short period of time. And I think I've told you before, I've never seen anyone that's grown their audience so quickly, and it continues to grow very quickly. So what is it? How did you get into that aspect of your career?
So I was working with a company, and essentially everyone was like, "Hey, let's do this. Let's get on board. Let's put it out there. I think that this is the future." Like, we discovered the secret to business in the 2020s is social media, which I guess has been the secret to things for quite some time. So like, not necessarily ahead of the curve, but for LinkedIn, I think it feels like kind of like an early move, and everybody that I worked with at the time did not stick with it, which I did. I just ran with this thing. And Eric, I think we've had plenty of conversations about this. I was off social media, like, altogether, not using it. I wasn't even really using LinkedIn much, and I don't know, like, I just ran with it. Like, I got excited. I noticed people weren't providing the value that I thought candidates deserved, and I was like, okay, I'll just tell it like it is. Like, what would I need to know if I was getting what do I wish I had when I moved into staffing from producing television? And that's really where I started. Like, how could I have been better in interviews? How could I promote myself, or get promoted faster? How could I move through my career more strategically? What do I need to be asking people? What mindsets do I need to have? And so I just wrote to, me in my 30s. I was like, or me in my 20s. I was like, here's what I wish I could give you, kid. And I I think it struck a chord, at least for some folks. So thanks to everybody
Yeah.
who follows and comments, and I'm so flattered that it grows every day. Yeah.
Yeah, it's right around 35,000 followers, and I just pulled up your LinkedIn page here, and just to give the audience some, just some context of the types of things you post. I mean, just today you posted something about 7 resume mistakes costing you credibility, which I think everyone wants to know about, how to improve the way they position themselves and market themselves to recruiters. And then, you also put a lot of just good one line reminders out there about, things you need to remember, that sort of thing. So it's really interesting. And you have this creative side of you that I don't see a lot on LinkedIn. You have a very creative way of bringing some pizzazz, or some, not flash, but just some really interesting way of presenting this content that could, let's be frank. I mean, this can be kind of boring if you let it be. This whole staffing recruiting idea. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate the compliment. I try to keep it interesting. I try to bring some past life creativity with me into staffing, and I'm glad that it's seen. And thank you. I'm beyond flattered, man.
Oh yeah, you bet. Yeah, and so be sure to follow Jonathan. If you don't follow him on LinkedIn, he puts out great content, and he's just a good contact to have in the industry. But from your perspective, what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see IT professionals making when they're managing their careers or just navigating changes in their careers, that sort of thing?
A big one is there's no operating thesis. Like, what is it that I solve? What is the thing that I tackle? What is the thing that I do? Like, really, using recursive thinking and getting to the most specific example that you can, and starting from that place is really important. I think that coupled with proof is really important, and it's not that people don't have proof that they're great in their career, but it's not always reflected in a resume. And I think so many resumes look and sound the same and have for the 20 plus years that I've been working. It's a lot of, I managed this, I oversaw this. Bring every single thing, every one of those things that you manage, everything that you oversee, everything that you are responsible for should have a number and tie to metrics and direct proof, and talk about the actual impact that you've made. And then I think a third one, if I had to add, would be role drift. Like, really just kind of saying yes to everything inside of the role that you're in, or saying yes to every role that comes along. If you're a contractor and you're looking for the next opportunity. I guess it's most people move roles because it's time, not necessarily because this is or maybe it's 50-50, but whether you're moving for out of necessity, or you're moving because you need to make your next leap, don't just accept the first thing unless it's really great and it's what you want to do. Don't drift into something that this feels right, but does it come back to that thesis, to that important, this is what I solved, this is what I'm great at, here's all the proof, what's the next logical step, what's the next step available?
Yeah, it's almost like you're painting a picture of what it would look like to work with you. Is that
You
is that
got
what
it.
you're getting at? I
Yeah,
mean,
I
because
mean, I couldn't have said it better. Yeah.
you're not just saying
You should be in this industry. You should be in staffing.
that's a good idea. We should start a company together.
Let's do it, dude. Let's do it. Yeah.
That's funny. So with that in mind, then how do job seekers, how can they stand out better? What are some of or speaking of specifics, do you have, without mentioning names, do you have candidates that you or examples of what a candidate has done in the past to really stand out and really, make a difference and differentiate themselves?
Yeah, I was chatting with a product manager last week, and just kind of going through. I said project manager, and it was like 3 times that they kept kind of telling me all these times that they'd like really reduced risk, like really like, here are these things that I nailed, right? And I think that's what you have to get to. Like, what are times that you've reduced risk? What have you done to increase throughput? Like, how have you helped impact decisions? Like, all of those things are really important to share. Know the context of who the buyer is. Is it the head of a PMO? Is it a CIO? Is it a hiring manager? And what do each of those people care about? I guess it's likely that there are a lot of people involved in that process of bringing you into a new company. But where does that stop? Who is the person that you will ultimately answer to, and what are they going to want to see? So, if it's a CIO, they're going to want to know about, risk and time, and how you've managed risk, and how you've impacted, and how you've, reduced time to delivery. Engineering directors are going to care about throughput, and PMO cares about predictability. So, like, you want to make sure that you hit those things. So build yourself a little folder of proof in every job you ever work in, and just drop what you did. Just share that and have that because you're going to need it later.
Yeah. Being able to show and illustrate specific examples. And it sounds like you're saying you want to speak the language and hit the hot buttons of the person that you're trying to get the attention of, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Interesting. how do so you started talking about the soft skills and some of the intangible
Mhm.
feeling type stuff that you look for and that you're so good at identifying, having come from Hollywood. But what role do soft skills like communication, adaptability, and other intangibles that maybe don't quite show up on a resume easily? How do those soft skills compare to technical expertise, and how would you sort of prioritize or balance the two?
I think the technical skills have to be a given. Like we have to assume at the very least you're competing against the best people. And then on
Mhm.
top of that, we also, obviously there's the emergence of agents and how those are being used and or people who are augmenting their own skills with AI. So I think that the technical skills have to be a given and you have to lean into the soft side. So the tech skills have to be that backbone. They I keep saying have to, but they have to be there. Um, and then the soft skills have to be the thing that allow you to shine, allow you to show why you're going to make an impact. Everyone wants to work with somebody they're going to enjoy working with, but they also want to work with somebody who is going to have their back, is going to make their job easier, is going to make things more predictable. So I think all of those elements are important, and maybe it's the same thing that I think about of like being a kid and playing baseball or hockey or you name it. You want to be a good teammate, and allowing that to show is just as important as showing that you're going to have great stories at lunch, or want to talk around the water cooler, or whatever elements that for you make a good teammate. um, make people's jobs easier, be pleasant to work with, be the kind person.
Yeah, yeah. Is there a way, if I'm a candidate and I'm trying to get your attention as either a recruiter and or a hiring manager, is there a way I can shine through in that way on a resume? Like, how do I get your attention in the first place? If I can get in front of you, sure, I can, I can have a conversation with you. We can build a connection and a relationship, and you can see my value. But if I can't get your attention or even get a conversation with you, how do you overcome that piece of it? Because it seems like resumes are so, to use your point or your word earlier, it's very cold. Either you hit the checklist of the things I'm looking for on paper, or you don't. And if you don't, I'm moving on. I don't care about cultural fit or soft skills at that point. How do I overcome that dynamic of, as a job seeker?
It's tricky. That's really hard. I don't want to say it's impossible to make that happen on a resume, but the executive summary, like everything that you're sharing above your experience that is introducing you, that's your chance. That's where you have to allow that to shine. And I've seen very few actually thread that needle and make a resume interesting. So if that's the area that you want to make interesting, you have to study copywriting. You have to get into the nitty gritty and nerd out and go make the most of every single word and every single sentence. Um, and for it to work in a resume it's mission impossible, man. You could make a whole movie about that there. Um, but I think it also can really come through in the messages that you send to recruiters and hiring managers. I think that's probably the number one spot. LinkedIn has made it maybe a little too easy with all of these AI tools that are built in, and I think the assumption now is everybody uses Claude, ChatGPT, you name it, to sort of plug their messages in, but make it human, just make it real. I don't want to read a giant wall of text that is just clearly, something that has been studied or studied translated by ChatGPT to get impact. Just why are you reaching out? Why is this going to be cool? Like, just please treat me and every other recruiter as a human being and just reach out the same way you hope we would. I think is something that goes a very, very, very long way.
Yeah, yeah. Very, very good advice. I'm actually having a trouble with the LinkedIn feed, but I'm looking at it on my phone here, so I can't put the question on the screen here, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
this question is from Tom on LinkedIn, and it's good to see you, Tom. I know him. He's actually a client of ours. So Tom's question here is: do you feel that age is a detriment in technology, or are organizations looking to capitalize on experience, especially in higher level roles? And this is something I've been hearing more lately. I don't know if it's just coincidence or what, but I've been hearing people comment about age and how, at a certain age, like my age or older, I would say, you're starting to, I'm starting to hear people, maybe it's just because I'm getting older and so all my peers are getting older and talking more about it. But
Okay.
is this a real thing? Is ageism a problem? Is it, how do you overcome the issue of age versus youth?
It's an interesting thing. It's like kind of like on both ends of the age spectrum. Like if you're very young or you're more senior in your career, like there's sort of like this similar standard. I don't know what exactly the sweet spot is anymore age wise, but I'm seeing a lot of that myself. Um, in terms of content, in terms of what's being put out there, or what maybe feelings that people have themselves. So Tom, I don't think, like if you are very, very senior in your career, that there are people who are necessarily, this is a big scary word, but discriminating against you in your career. And I certainly hope that's not the case, because that's not spoken to me, at least by people at companies that we work with. I'm not hearing any of that. I do think experience is always, always an advantage. That battle tested candidate always is somebody that I have in the mix for anything that I'm working on. So yeah, I think that there is, in terms of the content that I'm seeing, I'm like, okay, what am I? Maybe there's something that I'm missing, but in the conversations that I'm having day to day in business, no, I'm not seeing that.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. And here's a question from Darian on LinkedIn. Darian asked, "What are some of the most impactful metrics you've seen candidates share in IT and transformation context?" So you were talking about being specific and getting really detailed and painting that picture of what you actually did. And I know a lot of your recruiting background over the last few years has been in SAP and ERP in
Yep.
particular. But do you have examples of effective use of metrics and sort of illustration of in that way that you were talking about before?
Yeah, there's two. And they matter more than everything. It's money and time. Like if you can show how you positively impacted money and how you positively impacted time, you have done more than 90+% of people who will apply. And that is absolutely everything that buyers being, managers, directors, VPs, C-suite, that's what they want to see. They want to know that you can help save them money, make them more money, and save them time, do things faster. That's the name of the game. Do those things and you win.
Right.
I'll put it as simply as that. You will win if that is what you are sharing in your resume.
Yeah. So I saved the company this much time. I saved the company this much money, or I implemented, this far under budget, or whatever the metric might be. Something along those lines is what the type of metric you'd want to share, or the type of specifics you want to get into.
You got it. So I deliver this program 6 months early. We save $10 million, and you tie that to one of your job tasks. That's the sweet spot. I did this. It led to this savings this much faster. That's the recipe. That's the formula.
What I've seen be super powerful and resonate really well is if you've come into a situation that's kind of a gnarly situation you're walking into and you've turned it around. So if
Oh
you
yeah.
could go in and say, like, if you have the experience where you've gone into a project, it was way over budget, it was off track, whatever, and you were able to come in and turn it around, and you're able to point to specific metrics around that. That seems pretty powerful too. If you have that background, I would for sure highlight that, really showcase that on your resume, because that is such a rare skill set. And it seems like a lot of hiring people or IT leaders want that. They want those battle scars. They want to see someone who's been in some pretty gnarly situations and found a way out of it.
I totally agree, and it's another great way to use time and money. They thought it was going to take 12 months. They're 18 months in. I came in, did this in 6 months. They'd already spent this much. They thought they were going to have to spend this much more. They didn't. Instead, I saved them this. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
If you could turn things around when it's already a bad situation, you can take their bad numbers and make them your good numbers. That's
Right.
the move. Yeah,
Right. Right.
yeah,
Makes sense. So what about AI? How should IT professionals be thinking about AI? I know you talked about AI can be used to write resumes, but that's inhuman. You want to make sure you don't
yeah.
lose the humanity of your resume and the content you're creating. But what about just your career in general as it relates to AI? How do you future proof your career if there is such a thing? But how do you address AI either as far as a skill you might have or how you might use AI in your job? What have you seen work there?
Uh, don't don't fight the tool. Like that's I think the most important thing. Is weird as it is to say years into us having AI. If you're using it right now, you're ahead of ahead of the curve. I kind of like always use my parents as the benchmark of like how much they're using it. My dad's using it a bit. My mom's not using it at all, and so I know that you're ahead of a ton of people, but that doesn't necessarily apply to your career specifically. Um, I think large scale AI programs inside of huge companies are not as powerful right now as you as an individual user using AI in your job that is specific to you. If you are allowed to do that, right? Like every company and is different in terms of what is allowed. If you are allowed to use AI in your job, you should be using it to do absolutely everything you can to make things easier, to make your decision process more linear, more rapid, and to enhance everything that you do. Because it's going to make you understand tools more deeply as they become more advanced and as you have more opportunities for those things to grow. And ideally, as your company or companies that you work at the future start bringing on tools, you can help advise and guide those tools because I think we're all looking at the future of what work looks like differently. We don't know. So if you can impact the decision of the tools, you know how to use those tools to grow in your career and make your job and other jobs easier. It makes you far more valuable than just the person who completes the task
Yeah.
that is in front of you. Yeah.
And it seems like there's on the consulting side of what we do. So we have, two companies that I'm affiliated with. One is the Lander Talent, which does staffing, and then there's Third Stage Consulting, which does the more advisory and consulting type of work. There's a lot of connections between the two, but what we're talking about here is more building out an internal team versus a consulting team. But one thing we're seeing on the consulting side of what we do is that even the more forward-thinking organizations right now, where we're advising them on AI strategy, because that's a big offering for us right now. We have 3 clients in particular where they're not looking at ERP, they're not looking at your traditional tech upgrade. They're looking for just AI strategy to help us figure out how to use AI in our organizations. And even these forward-thinking organizations are just barely getting started. Like they're barely scratching the surface. They barely understand how this technology could possibly affect them. So if you can show that on your resume, I would think that's going to be a pretty powerful differentiator to say, okay, this is, is this just hype? Because there is a lot of hype around AI, but this person actually, I see how they actually used it and they're giving me examples of how they use it to do their jobs better. It seems like that'd be something you'd want to highlight, on your resume. Is that true?
I absolutely. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I think that is something that every company is looking for. It's one of those, like if you're a hiring manager, if you're going to do a quick search of a resume and look for keywords, that's your AI is going to be one of them. And you're going to see how that's being used by every candidate for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Very interesting. So
Yeah.
when you're talking to CIOs and hiring managers, then if you sort of shift gears here and look at it from the perspective of a CIO, VP of IT, IT director, as any sort of hiring manager in IT, what do they say they value most, or what are they really looking for? If you're sort of stepping into their shoes, what are they looking for?
Like people who really are able to make big decisions with limited info. Ideally they have all the info, but they want somebody that they can count on, that they can rely on. I think change hygiene is important. I think stakeholder steadiness is important. I think really they want people who can reduce risk and really increase time to value. I think those are all important aspects for CIOs right now. They want people that they can trust, and I think each of those kind of contributes to that.
Right. So it's not just certifications they're looking for, because a lot of times it seems like job seekers focus on, or maybe borderline obsess about, what certifications do I have? What training do I have? And I'm sure that helps. I don't want to be dismissive of that, but it seems like there's a lot more to it than just, do I check the box of being certified in this one tool or this one technology or whatever? It's more, again, coming back to the intangibles. It's like, how do you let those intangibles shine through on your resume as you're looking for work?
I think that's the core of it. I think certifications are important, especially if you haven't worked in a role where you have exposure to a specific technology. I certainly would have anxiety if I were going into a role and I didn't, I'm like, okay, this is the next step in my career, and there is this brand new technology, and I have not used it, but I have gotten certified in it, and I've used it in a sandbox environment. I try every way that I could to showcase that myself, so I get the importance there. But kind of going back to Tom and Tom's question about experience and being battle tested, this is a super simple for me, pertains to me example. Like if something new came along that was a large language model that I could chat with, like ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, but it's brand new, say it's DeepSeek. Of course I can use DeepSeek. I've played with all of these other technologies and know how that works. So I think, there's a lot of time spent on certifications and what should I get and what should I have here. That could be better spent in framing all the work you have done even better.
Yeah. Now flipping that around a bit here, if I don't have a lot of experience, here's a question from Darian on LinkedIn. What can younger professionals learn from the more battle tested peers to fast track credibility? So if I don't have as much experience that you're talking about here, maybe I'm just starting out or just a few years into my career, maybe I'm looking to make a shift into IT, how do I leverage, or, how do I address that?
I think it is always helpful to find mentors. I always want to learn from the best, and I think coming directly out of university or coming out of whatever program that you've been learning, whatever particular technology you focused on, you want to get out there and get in your career. But I'm a networker, man. Like I am a busy bee myself, so I'm like, okay, who can I connect with and chat with and learn this new thing about? So there's this guy that I like in the SAP community specifically that I love that does this, and his name's Gagan Mohan Singh. He is an incredible SAP mentor. So I would look for the Gagan Mohan Singhs of whatever it is that I do, and just be like, hey, I'm trying to learn this. Like, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? Not, hey, I've got this experience and I've done this, and like, I need your help. Just reach out to somebody like a friend and say, hey, what can I do? Also, hey, here's a really cool article I think you might like because this is the sort of stuff that you do. Try and just genuinely connect and get some feedback and get a relationship going where somebody can guide you, and where you can find someone who can guide you is something that will have immense value.
Yeah.
So I think mentors are always important to have.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that's a good point. And I don't, as I think to people that I've hired and the ones that have been most successful in getting my attention, it hasn't been the people that just sent me an email with a resume that said, hey, I've got 20 years of ERP experience and blah, 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 blah. Because I get those messages all the time. So you're, unfortunately, you're just like everyone else that sends me an email. If you send me an email, even if you do have that great experience, it just doesn't resonate. But the people that have been most effective in cutting through the noise have been the ones that do exactly what you said. They ask for help. The ones that reach out to me and say, hey, I'm just starting my career. I like your channel. Maybe they've, stroke my ego a little bit, and I feel a little flattered. So I'm going to keep reading the message because I'm a guy. I have an ego. So, so the human, it speaks to the humanity of me. But those people I've hired multiple people that way. The people that didn't ask for a job, they asked for help. And that's a subtle but important difference, because I think everyone wants to help. Even if I can't hire you, I would love to help you. Maybe I can introduce you to someone, especially if I like you as a person and I want to see you succeed, even if it's not a third stage or through a Lander Talent client. So that's a good point. I hadn't really thought about it that way, but that is a great point. I think younger people have an advantage where they can kind of work around the system a little bit, or kind of
Yeah.
create their own relationships and build a personal connection, because that personal connection is going to be a lot more powerful than the 20 years of experience that you wish you had that you don't. In my opinion.
I couldn't agree more, man. Like it is a major, major, major advantage. And I actually was thinking about you and Kelly and the story you guys told me about somebody that you brought onto your team. So I know firsthand from that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. A few of those examples. And so I think that's a good lesson for those that are trying to cut through the noise. What about shifting gears then and looking at, if I'm an IT leader and I'm trying to build out my IT team, and I'm trying to, build the right skill sets, and
Mhm.
trying to build the right competencies in-house, build the right chemistry. What are some of the key things I should be thinking about or focusing on, or risks I should be avoiding when I'm trying to build out my team?
Vague ownership. I think vague ownership is a big one. You want to be clear of who owns what. I think that a lot of I think it would surprise some people how many companies like where everything is really shared responsibility, and I think shared responsibility and shared mission and rowing in the right direction is a really wonderful thing, and I think it's absolutely essential for culture. But I think some people mistake that for wait, that's how we should do everything. We should share what these responsibilities are. I think there is a lot of role sprawl. So like on the front end, when you're putting a job description out there and they're Frankenrex of like we're looking for a unicorn and it's just we're patching together 7 different jobs and like seeing if it's there is a clear indicator of there's a lot of things that probably aren't working or are not working as smoothly as they should, and trying to patch those as simply as possible. So I think being clear about what is actually missing from your team or from your company is really important, and zeroing in on those things one at a time, so you can build stability. You don't want to just stretch some tape over a dam and hope that it holds. I think that's really important. I think I write about this a lot, but general interview theater. I think a lot of companies want to put their best face forward because they want, and the same with people who are coming in and interviewing, they're putting their best face forward. But companies don't always talk about these are the actual problems. Like, hey, there's we're at DEF CON 1 right now. Like this is what's going on, and we have to fight this fire out of the gate. I think that's important, like it can't just be all vibes. As much as I want every vendor interview to be all vibes, it can't. I think approval mazes are not great, and that can apply to, to the actual interview process, like how many people have to go through this to really determine somebody is the right fit. That sort of stalled decision making usually is, means you need to go back to the drawing board and talk about decisions in general. And then maybe this applies a little bit to what I was just sharing, but no onboarding runway, actually get like, okay, cool. Now we do have somebody who's sharing problems, but you can't really drop somebody into firefight on day one unless they are Tom. Then Tom can come in and fight on day one because he's got all the experience and he's battle tested, but not for everybody. So
Yeah.
yeah, those are
Yeah.
like sort of the culture clues or some of the red flags I'd look out for if I were hiring or I were building my own team right now.
Yeah. Do
Yeah.
you end up advising and clients, those hiring managers that come to you and to us for staffing needs, do you end up advising them on that a lot? Like, hey, before you bring this resource in, you should really think about doing A, B, and C to build the right environment for them?
Yeah, that's a really important aspect. And I think looking at things and in consulting and what the hiring process and what the internal culture is really important. Although, you and I can't ever set another company's internal um, culture. We can certainly, if we see something that might be helpful, we can always point that out. So I think that's actually something, one of my favorite parts of the job, beyond just helping, the right person get the right role and a company grow, is go, hey, this, I noticed this, and I think that this will help improve things. Or if you want to do 4 rounds of interviews, you're going to lose 70% of the candidates that are interested in this. Let's get it down to 2 and let's really make impact. So that's one of my favorite things, is nerding out on culture and hiring process.
Yeah. And again, it's adding more value than just a transaction or a body that you're putting on a team.
Yeah, yeah, and I think a lot of people look at staffing as that, is like, hey, we're just gonna, the term. This is somehow a new term for me, but body shop, just like sending people over. I'm trying to remember who this was that said that to me. Like, oh, are you guys just like a body shop? And I was like, what? Because that's my dad's career, is he owned body shops.
An actual body shop,
actual like collision repair shop. Yeah, but I understand the moniker now. Like, okay, so most companies just send bodies over, and I've experienced that, and I've been against competition that does that. But you have to provide more value. Like we built out a very rigorous process, and one of those many steps is actually hiring. Like there's so much more that is involved.
Yeah. Yeah. And me being, coming from the consulting side of things, just my whole career, I see and appreciate the value of a team-based consulting approach and whatnot. And so, I sort of have that biased lens that I view things through. And that was actually one of the reasons why, one of the reasons it took me so long to figure out a way to dabble or to get into staffing, was because I didn't want to create a body shop. And then as you and I got to know each other, and I saw your style and how you were treating staffing differently, that became very interesting, because I thought, okay, well, we have consulting over here, but what about those people that, whether they want third stage to advise them and consult them or not, there's a need over here for some of those same companies that need to build a team. They might need a CIO, they might need an internal project manager, an architect, or someone that they want to have in house. So that leads to a question though around, internal and external resources, contractors versus W-2, full-time employees.
Mhm.
What are you seeing in terms of how IT leaders are finding that balance, between outside resources and internal resources, whether it's part of a transformation or just running an IT department in general?
Great question. I think if it's known work, if it's known and it's ongoing, you're going to want somebody that is full time on your staff. You want to own the architecture, you want to own the actual knowledge in house. That is important for bringing in a permanent individual who owns that specifically. If it's unknown, if it's time boxed, if it's outcome based, consultants are just awesome for that. That's kind of the sweet spot there. And then when you're talking about capacity spikes, if you're talking about specialized skills, that are needed, maybe not indefinitely, that's where you want contractors. So I think if you look at the kind of a general guide, I have already said this, but own your architecture, own the knowledge in house, require that artifacts be handed off, docs, run books, you name it, and set the exit criteria, like for consultants, for contractors, at the kickoff. I think those are what I would look at myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the unhealthy dynamics in the IT space that we're trying to overcome
Yeah.
with lender talent is the fact that, over on the consulting side at third stage, we could be doing the best job we could possibly do. But if that client doesn't have the right internal team to support the project, it's like our work is in vain. Yeah, we did great work, but the project still wasn't successful because the client didn't have the right resources. They didn't have ownership of the project. And what happens a lot of times is this sort of learned helplessness to outsource things to consultants, whether it's us, and or what's even more common is you outsource it to like a system integrator. If I'm implementing SAP, I go find the SAP system integrator and I just let them handle the stuff they're good at, which just some degree you need that outside perspective because you probably don't have it in-house. But to the extent you can build that team in-house and build more ownership and upskill your own team, whether it's through contractors or full-time employees, permanent placements, I feel like that piece has been missing. And that's something that we're hoping to address with Lander. And again, whether or not it's a third stage client or not, doesn't matter with Lander, because we just want to help teams build the right resources and the right team out there. But it seems like that ownership is a really important, speaking of outcomes, we're not placing bodies, we're not placing skills, we're creating a situation where clients are taking ownership and accountability for their own IT departments and their own digital transformations.
Absolutely. And I will say this example again because I like it, but I said it the last time we chatted. Like, if you have an air conditioning, if you have the HVAC company come out and install air conditioning in your house, you don't want to call them every single time that you want to change the thermostat. You know, my car can drive itself, but I want to know how to drive it if I need to. Like, those are important things. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. What's the most overlooked factor in your experience that makes IT teams successful? What's that secret sauce of a high performing team? And we host our annual Digital Stratosphere conference, and I've seen you present on this topic of how to build a dream team, and comparing it, likening it to sports. In sports, that's a big deal. To win, you've got to create this chemistry. It's not just about the stats of the individual players, it's how that team comes together. What is it in IT that creates that secret sauce, that cohesion, that winning team, if you will, within an IT department?
For me, and this is the softest, like almost mushy soft of it's mushy soft of soft skills. Empathy, I think, wins the day always in every single team that I've ever been a part of. And I've played sports my entire life, from childhood to adult dodgeball, which is something that was a big part of my life for a long time. But it's important to really, to understand the people that you're with and feel that and empathize with them. And I think if you start there, everything else is much easier. But a real definition of done is important. Like that, especially if you're implementing new technology, that's got to be done. Done has to be done, and you have to know what done is. That's a lot of done that I said there. But then the real work can start. Then you can actually harness and use the technology. You want to get past done. I think also decision logs are very important. Not just what has been done, but why these things were chosen. You want to be able to look back and reflect on those things. Have handoffs built in and in mind from day one. And all of that starts with done and understanding the why behind the decisions that were made.
Yeah. Very interesting. And here's a related question that builds on what you were just talking about and what I just asked, but Darian on LinkedIn asked, what should leaders do in the first 90 days to ensure that new IT hires succeed?
The clear roadmap. Like, if you start, I think if you take it back all the way to the day zero, having a clear path that people are progressing through. And we've touched on this already. AI exists and has made that a lot easier. Like, what are the things that I need to do in the first 90 days in this role? But I think make sure that whoever the hire is, that they have the knowledge, that they have everything that they need to be armed with to actually make impact. If you take those first 90 days and look at them as found money, if there's real impact in those first 90 days, I think that is helpful. And then the real work can start beyond. But I think it starts with, what's the roadmap? What are the expectations? I guess a lot of roles do definitely need to be impactful from day one or much sooner than 90 days. But look at that ramp, look at the impact that you want that person to make long term, and make sure you are making strides weekly toward the long term impact you need them to deliver. Throw them the alley-oop, give them the assist, pass the ball to them.
Right. Yeah. Very, very cool. Here's a question. I'm not sure which direction to take this question, but I'll pull it up anyway. This is on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
This is from Sanjay. Sanjay says, can you discuss a time when you had to make a difficult decision regarding technology investments? And and maybe I'll reframe this a little bit around, you know, when it comes to technology investments or technology projects, you know, how important is that in highlighting that on you know, either in terms of when you're looking for a resource, making sure they have that relevant experience for the type of technology you're deploying or investing in, or if you're a job seeker, how much do you want to emphasize specific tools and technologies like that that you've made investments in over time? How important is that piece of it?
Question. So the way you've reframed that is like, how important is it to highlight a technology that you've worked with if the company is using that technology? Is that the way we're looking at it?
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah,
Okay. Okay.
yeah,
I mean, lean into it. If they're using it, if they're using that technology, lean into that. Very, very simply. You know, like if you've been using S4 HANA for the last few years, and the new role you're getting into is an S4 HANA implementation, highlight that all day. Because to go back to Sanjay, you know, it probably was a difficult decision to decide on who is going to, you know, who's your ERP. So lean into that technology so they know that they are making the right decision with somebody who has experience with that specifically, if you do have that. Yeah.
right, right. Yeah, and again, that shouldn't be the only thing you focus on, but that gets their attention and it obviously gets you past that first filtering stage, because a lot of this, you know, I think maybe it's worth noting, you know, a lot of times recruiting managers or people that are hiring, for example, you to come find the right resource for them, you know,
Mhm.
you only have a couple seconds to get the attention of them. You know, if it, and again, back to that transactional cold side of recruiting that can be there, it can be cold in that, you know, hiring managers just want to see S4 HANA. If I don't see S4 HANA on a resume and I'm implementing S4 HANA, then I don't care that you implemented Microsoft or Oracle or whatever. I think it's unfortunate because a lot of times you overlook really good candidates that might actually be a better fit culturally. Maybe it's good that they have an outside different perspective. Sometimes it helps to have experience with multiple tools because it gives you just a different way of thinking about these projects. But you have to get the hiring manager's attention, and if you can highlight those technical skills, then that's going to help you get past that first test, if you will.
Absolutely.
Very cool. So how should when organizations think about their approach to recruiting and retaining talent in today's market, what are they doing wrong? Like, what are some things that organizations need to do to rethink their approach to recruiting and retention of talent?
It makes the does not. I want to be careful about how I say this. Companies don't make the best job descriptions. They don't write the best job ads, and it's that double-edged sword of AI. It's okay, cool. Now I can outsource this part of the job that I really don't like to AI, but it then is this like very long, verbose, loquacious, and I'm intentionally using wordy words because that's how these job descriptions are starting to look. They're very long, they're very bloated, and they don't feel like they speak to a person directly. So I think getting to the humanity of what it is, writing a job description as simply as you can so it can be understood by everybody. And it's not that you have to write things simply so you need to write things simply so it's easy to read, not to rule out whether or not somebody understands the big language that you're using. So um, I think having clear career ladders is another one that's really important. You want to show paths. You want to give an idea of the mentors that people will have access to. You want to be able to show fast track stories of, you know, we hired somebody for this and, you know, they ended up taking off. They went into an entirely different direction. So I think you want to highlight and have in mind linear growth, but you want to also have examples of nonlinear growth, because there are a lot of people who are just achievers who go, okay, cool. So in a year, I can maybe move up slightly and then another year slightly. But for somebody like me that just wants to go out and run and do whatever it is I can and achieve, I want to, you know, if I were joining a new company, I would want somebody to be like, you can go as far as you want, just do the thing. Just show us and add value and find where you can do this. I think scorecards also are important, and those apply in the interview process and how you're going to score things, but also scorecards and how people are making an impact day to day in their roles are important. I am, as always, as we always chat about, like very focused on the soft skill sides, but I do like to make sure that that's measured with ones and zeros and clear stats that show how people are doing their jobs. So,
Right. Right. Now,
and then retention also, manager quality, huge, 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 huge. Make sure you've got managers that are leading team first. I think that is beyond important.
kind of that mid-level management you're talking, like
Yeah.
the people that are actually going to you'll be working directly with. You want to make sure that those people are high quality, high caliber. Because I think I've seen you post on LinkedIn something to the effect of I'm paraphrasing, but people don't leave bad jobs; they leave bad managers. I think I've seen you post. Is that
Yeah.
yeah? It's
That's
usually not the job they don't like; it's the boss
it.
they don't like.
It's the boss. It's the boss. Very few people look back and remember a job. They remember what it felt like to work there. And all of that comes from who they work for.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Now, looking ahead to the future, what do you think the field of IT, careers and staffing, both sides of the equation or both sides of the coin? How do you think it looks in a few years? What should we be preparing for? What's your crystal ball telling you as far as where we're headed in terms of staffing, careers, all that stuff?
I mean, I'm never going to be the first to say this, but it's AI everywhere. It's AI co-pilots. It's AI, enhancing everything that you do, and that is amazing. My workday starts and ends with that as well. But proof, like that's the other side of that. Making sure your quote unquote portfolio, your resume is chock full of proof is going to be even more important when we all have access to an infinite intelligence to make us look even better at our jobs. The proof that we are good at our jobs is more important than ever, because we can look like we do. Um,
Right.
and I think data competency, every single team, it touches data. Yeah, I think understanding that is important. I think, I don't know. I think there's maybe something to platform consolidation. Like we're probably going to start seeing in terms of AI and newer tools, like who is really going to be the breakout in certain areas. But I think AI co-pilots and proof, if I had to like really zero in on two things, make sure you're building proof, and use AI to make your job easier, because that's what you're going to be doing indefinitely until we
Yeah.
don't have jobs. Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm
Too
kidding.
soon.
I'm kidding.
I know. Yeah. There's all the doomsday fortune tellers out there saying that, well, none of us will have jobs at some point in the future, which I don't think is true, but I do think you need to embrace it, whatever you're doing, especially if you are in a corporate white collar job. I mean, you need to be focused on AI, especially the more knowledge based type stuff. But you bring up a good point about the proof, because I think that's really important, because with so many people now presumably using AI to write their resumes and to make it look really good, the ones that do have that differentiating experience and proof, I think that's going to be huge, and AI can't replicate that.
It can. It can hallucinate that, but it
Yeah.
cannot replicate that.
Well, that's the other thing too. I was thinking about when you were talking about AI to write resumes. I know I've used AI to respond to RFPs in the past, requests for proposals, or RFIs, requests for information.
Yeah.
Company reaches out and says, "Hey, we just want to understand more about third stage. Can you share some of your qualifications?" Blah blah blah. So I'll use AI to help write that. But I've noticed that sometimes it'll make stuff up. Like it'll say stuff that's not true. It's not good or bad. It's just like that company is not a client of ours, or we have not done that type of project that it's talking about. But speaking of hallucinations, you do have to be careful that you're not letting AI misrepresent your background. That's the sort of the flip side of this, is you want to make sure you're truthful and not, over exaggerating or whatever. But certainly you want to, the proof you have, you want to for sure highlight that because AI can't do that for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Very good.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you being here today, Jonathan. And best way to reach out to you, I'm assuming LinkedIn, but is that the best way for people to learn more about
Yeah.
you?
Yeah. LinkedIn. If you're looking for a job, if you have a resume you want to send over, my email is jw@landertalent.com. Also.
Yeah. Very cool. We'll tag you and we'll put that in the comments here too after we're done broadcasting. So everyone will have your email as well. But if you're a job seeker, you can send your resume. If you're looking for resources for your IT department, whether it's part of a digital transformation project or just an internal IT general need, whether it's permanent placement or contractor or both, certainly reach out to Jonathan as well. He can help put you in touch with the right resources that might help build out that team you're looking for. So thanks for being here today, Jonathan. Really appreciate it. As always, it's fun learning from you and talking with you. So thank you very much.
Hey, my pleasure, Eric. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. And thank you to the audience for the great questions and conversation here today. I hope you found this helpful. You'll see this exact interview. We're going to polish it up, edit it, add some additional content. It'll be released next week as our official Transformation Ground Control episode next week. So you can find new episodes every Wednesday at transformationgroundcontrol.com. So this is, I think, our 230th episode or so. So you can go back and watch all 230 that you missed if you want to, if you have a lot of time on your hands. That would take quite some time, but you can go cherry pick the ones you want to watch if you don't have time to watch them all. Be sure to check that out at transformationgroundcontrol.com. Reach out to Jonathan, connect with him there. Be sure to follow me on LinkedIn as well if you don't already. Hope you're having a great day, and we look forward to seeing you next week on the next episode of Transformation Ground Control. Take care in the meantime.